Hi, everyone. My name is Jolly Rajan, and along with Kumar Datatrayan, we are from Agile Meridian, and this is our Agile Short Series. This is the 35th episode of our Agile Short Series. It is on leadership as a service. Kumar has been talking about this within Agile Meridian for quite some time. And so we have heard a little bit about leadership as a service. But what is it? What is leadership as a service? Kumar is here to explain to the rest of us. Kumar?
Hi everyone. So I was exposed to this pattern, leadership as a service, a couple of years ago, as when I went through my initiation into the X-Scale Alliance, the X-Scale set of patterns and thought experiments, ideas on how to implement agile at scale at the organizational level. And one of the patterns is this one, leadership as a service, and it really kind of resonated with me because it's a little bit easier to understand than servant leadership, right? So as a concept, as you know, a lot of people, a lot of leaders, it doesn't quite resonate with them. Servant leadership is like, no, I'm not a servant, I'm a leader, right? And really everyone is a leader in their own right, at their own level, wherever they are. And so leadership as a service, just the words themselves, just it lends a different connotation to the act of leadership, right? You're providing a service to others by leading them in a certain way. And so it kind of stuck with me, and I was really intrigued by the collection of words, leadership as a service, and I wanted to learn more. And so I think that was one of the first things that attracted me to Xscale. And through my dealings with my learnings with Peter Merrill and the Xscale coaches, I got to learn much more about leadership as a service and many other acronyms that come along with the Xscale framework. And what was really interesting is that it's a very tangible pattern, leadership as a service, to apply to our clients. And so it was one that I really kind of glommed onto early on.
Yeah, how has that been in practice when you talk about it with the clients that we meet with the coachees? How has that resonated with them? Because they're always used to leaders are always used to leading, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of times it isn't something that I prescribe. It's more of in response to a challenge that leaders have, right? So how do I? It's mostly managers, right? Managers that are very
Mhm.
in traditional roles where they have to, maintain control of something or manage a team or whatever it might be, and they're going through a transformation, agile ways of working, and the managers are like, well, how do I do this? Because I'm so used to um, telling people what to do, and really, honestly, people are used to being told what to do, right? So it's sort of this vicious cycle of management uh, adhering to old habits and practices because, well, the followers are used to that as well. So it's like, how do you break out of that cycle? And so when managers come to me and say, hey, I need a better way to lead and manage my team that's more aligned with agile. I want the team to be more empowered. I want them to sort of start taking on more responsibility and accountability for the work they do. It's really hard because they're not doing it, and so I end up stepping in and filling the void and doing what I've always done. And so in response to that, I say, well, how about we talk about leadership as a service, because it's a way to break out of those habits, right? And both for you as a leader and for your team as followers. And it kind of works like this. As a leader providing a service, you have to make sure your followers understand what they're accountable for and what the expectations are. Nothing new there. That's true with any management, any team, right? With a manager and people that are doing the work. But what makes it different is maybe in the explicitness of it, where the leader is only making decisions or providing a service when the team cannot reach consensus on a decision that they need to make. And so that's very explicit. It's like, Okay, what do I do as a leader? I break ties. That's it. And I break ties in a way that is still very empowering for the team. So in other words, if say I'm a team member and you're a leader and I'm having a discussion with my team, you're there, you're maybe facilitating it, and we can't reach a decision point, you might say, well, Bob, I think this decision is closest to you. You should make the decision. So you're not actually making the decision for the team. You're acknowledging who the person is that's closest to the decision to make that decision. And the protocol is set up in a way that everyone has to agree that whoever as a leader, you're basically deciding who the decider is. And the protocol is whatever the decision is, the rest of the team's going to go along with it, right? No arguments, because the biggest block, I think, in making progress as a team is a lack of decision making, lack of accountability for making decisions. And so what this does is sort of speed the decision making process along. Doesn't matter if it's a good decision or a bad decision. That's irrelevant. It's like, make a decision and let's move on. We're going to learn if it's a good decision or a bad decision. We're gonna learn whether we're gonna learn something either way. If it's a good decision, great. We made a great decision. How can we continue that? If it's a bad decision, what can we learn from it and make a better decision next time?
Yeah. So you might have mentioned a couple of leading indicators, so to speak. One of which was the team is paralyzed. They don't know who can make the decision. What kind of other indicators might the leader see, which should make him think, oh, I need to here, not keep doing the same thing that I've been doing all the time, which is me making the decisions?
Yeah, I mean, when, I think some smells, if you will, or signs of trouble, a lot of people are making similar decisions, or at least asking similar questions that points to a decision not being made, right? Or people are unclear about their roles and expectations of their roles, or they are unclear about whose decision something is, right? So you have a team. I'll give you an example. One of the teams that I'm coaching right now, it's a fairly large team, and the biggest challenge they have is they don't know whose responsibility it is to make certain types of decisions. And so in those cases, a team can really get paralyzed, right? It's like, okay, we don't know where to go. And the worst thing is we don't even know who to go ask if it's their responsibility to make a decision. And so in those cases, that expectation setting workshop is really important to clarify the roles and responsibilities of the people on the team from a decision-making protocol perspective. Like it's sort of like a RACI, but it's simplified. And rather than a RACI chart, it's more of a DRI. There's a DRI for every decision, a directly responsible individual, and then there's everyone else. They're either consulted or informed, right? So if you think of a decision for a team, like maybe it's hiring a new team member into the team, right? Who's a decision maker on that? Who's a DRI? Typically, right? And so the team might say, well, that's the manager's responsibility. That's their decision. And the manager, if they're being really forward thinking, they're like, well, no, it's not really me. They have to work with you guys. You need to be the decision makers on this. And because the contribution of this team member is directly related to how well they integrate with all of you. So who would like that responsibility? Who would like to be directly responsible for making the hiring decision?
Right.
And so that forward-thinking manager is gonna empower the team with that responsibility. And say someone steps up, say it's you, Jolly, you're like, okay, I'll take that on. So now you're the DRI for all team hires, and everyone else is consulted or informed. Right. And so when it comes time to making a decision on whether to hire someone or not, and the team can't reach consensus, then if I'm the leader, I'm like, well, Jolly, what's your decision? And Jolly, you might say, no, not a fit.
Yeah.
let's not go, right?
Right.
It's done. So then again, the protocol is the way it's set up. It's you move on, right? And
Mhm.
you go to the next decision point. And so like this, you may have responsibilities assigned to different people on the team,
Mhm.
depending on whether they volunteer or if it's really their responsibility. Like say it's the test person, some test decision regarding the type of software to do for
Yeah.
automation, test automation, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, who should be the DRI for that? Probably someone that has intimate knowledge of testing tools,
The product owner.
or it could be that, right?
No, I'm just kidding.
If they have intimate knowledge of testing tools.
Unlikely,
So
but
unlikely,
yeah,
exactly. So then that decision making authority is conferred on that individual,
right.
hopefully with their enthusiasm and blessing,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how it works. And so when it comes to
Mhm.
responsibilities and decision making authority, the
Mhm.
DCI model I think is far superior than a RACI, and it
Yeah.
also helps implement the whole leadership as a service
Right.
concept.
Right. Right. And on the other side of this equation, we talk about the leaders themselves changing their approach to decision making. How have you, in your experience or observations, how has the other side of this equation, the team, the people who are in charge, how have they reacted to their newfound responsibilities, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's equally challenging and hard for the team to, if you will, step up
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
assume the responsibility that's being made available to them. I wouldn't say given because that's not the right connotation.
Hmm.
It's really, they're hopefully signing up for these responsibilities, but it isn't automatic. It isn't overnight, right? It
Hmm.
takes time for it to develop. And so for a leader, yeah, the leader has to be incredibly disciplined and in allowing failure
Right.
on many levels. A failure to step up and make a decision, failure in voicing opinions, failure in whatever, and the leader has to constantly coach and cajole members of the team to sort of rise up and understand that this responsibility isn't the leaders anymore, right?
Hmm.
It belongs with the people that are closer to the decision, and it takes time. And the good ones, it takes time for them too to sort of stay in their role, in their zone, if you will, and
Right.
provide that service. They're going to slip up. People are going to slip up, all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, so in this case, an atmosphere of trust is really probably the first thing that you work on because, as you said,
Mm,
people are going to fail, right?
yeah, yeah,
And the acceptance of that failure and working through that is probably equally important.
absolutely. Trust is super critical and super important. It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day. Forget the name of the podcast. We can put it in the show notes later. But he was talking about flexibility as being the most critical component of workplace culture today, right?
Mhm.
And flexibility is the number one request, in this post-pandemic, or we're still in the pandemic. It's really not post-pandemic. The current state of work, and people want flexibility, but people define it in different ways. It's not just the flexibility to work from home or work hybrid. It's also flexibility in the decisions that they make. And it was really interesting, the podcast, because they were talking about exactly this. He didn't call it leadership as a service, but really it was leadership as a service just by whatever he called it. The
Mhm.
the leader really empowering the workforce to make decisions. And this one example was with Gore Technology, Gore-Tex, the
Mhm.
clothing manufacturer, right?
Mhm.
They started this program, CEO for a Day program, and they're a very open, egalitarian company, right? So they very there are not a lot of layers or levels
Mhm.
in the organization, and so the CEO is very connected to all the people that work there. Leaders are approachable by anyone. So if anyone has an idea, they can go call up the CFO and say, "Hey, I have an idea. I want to do this." But what really struck me was the CFO for a day thing. This concept where everyone has a chance to be a CEO for one day, and I think in the year. And so they sort of hold a competition, and someone is selected to be the CEO for the day, and whatever they say goes.
Hmm.
Whatever they decide goes for that one day.
That's amazing. That's a
Yeah,
level of trust
yeah,
that is unseen.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is that most of the innovations and engagement and gains in engagement and morale and stuff comes from, he attributes, the CEO attributes to this CEO for a day
That's
concept.
amazing.
You know,
Wow.
so
Amazing.
I would say that is the epitome, if you will, of leadership as a
Mhm.
service. The CEO is really providing service to empower and enable innovation at his company.
Right, right. And to the opening statement that you kind of made, everyone has some level of leadership built into them, which is one of the Kanban lead principles, leadership at all levels.
That's right.
And I'm a big fan of it, and I think this fits right in with the leadership as a service concept. I believe meaningful change can be made at every single level if it exists in teams, in programs, in products, in the whole entire organization. And if they know that, if the culture empowers them to make those kind of leadership decisions,
Hmm.
huge changes can happen.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, there are some examples of where this has really worked well. I mean, I won't name any names, but you know, I alluded in a testimonial I did the other day for Xscale to this one place where the leader, you know, when it clicked for them, it was pretty magical because the leader was ready to make a decision on behalf of the team, and I happened to be in that meeting, and he kind of, maybe it was because I was there, I don't know. He kind of looked over at me and he smiled and he stopped whatever he was going to say and instead said, um, you know, whoever the person's name was, what do you, you know, say it's Jolly, what's the decision? It's really your decision to make, right? And so that's when I knew a habit was starting to form, because it is really about habits, but forming new habits as leaders and as followers, right? And of course, followers are also leaders, and so forming new habits, and that takes time and it takes
Yeah,
patience.
yeah. I have an example as well. This is someone who I know who works in the federal government, who has really push those decisions to the people closest to the problem, and it has transformed the organization that they are working in. People are not very comfortable with it. It probably took about a year for them to come around to the idea that, oh, now I can actually make decisions.
Yeah.
And even the leaders, the higher level leaders in the organization are taking note, which
Mm.
is pretty impressive for a federal government system. So yeah, great success. Maybe they don't take it by the same name, but as you said, Kumar, the concepts really are similar in both those instances.
Yeah,
Perfect.
totally. I agree.
Awesome. Thank you, Kumar. I mean, we are close to our 20-minute mark. Thanks for the detailed explanations, case studies, examples of what leadership as a service means. Hope you guys can take it into your organization as well. If you need any help with it, ping Kumar. We are always here to help you. Kumar, any last thoughts before we
But
sign off?
the only final thing is that we are lead a leadership cohort. We meet monthly, and uh, we have a small group of very committed leaders and followers who are applying these types of patterns to their roles, you know, and wherever they work. And uh, we'd love more of you to join us and make it even more effective, and of course, you know, valuable for you. So we'll put a link down below so you can check it out and see if it's something you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Kumar. Until next time.
All
Bye for
right.
now.
Bye everyone.